when I used to go and get my face painted or like get my forearms painted, I always asked for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because I was a huge TMNT fan. So this is probably what I would have done by default. I was a big fan of Donatello, so I would always ask for Donatello. My second favorite being Michelangelo. So I do remember going to a fair and actually having Donatello on one arm and Michelangelo on the other. But from these choices, I like rainbows too. My son is also a big fan of rainbows. But I kind of like the shooting star. I'm going to get the shooting star. Again, Xavier made quick work painting, and Nicholas... I felt like if I got the rainbow, then George would have felt left out. Because if three of us had a rainbow and he had the one football, maybe he would feel special, but I also didn't want him to feel left out just in case. So I'm going to not get a rainbow. Again, Xavier made a quick work painting, and Nicholas was soon jumping out of his chair with a brand new rainbow adorning his cheek. He walked over and took his place in the chair. Can I get one too? Of course. The three brothers huddled together off to the side, proudly admiring and showing off each other's face paintings. Why does George look so upset right now? Elizabeth crossed her arms, spotting you in the chair next. She'd been quietly hanging around the stall, attempting to not to be too impatient. You were the last one left to go. I can start when you're ready. Right, you shift your attention away from your group and instead stared directly into the artist's face. You liked their pink hair. It was pulled back and tucked under a uniform hat, and from this distance you realized that their eyes were more purplish than the brown color they looked when farther away. So what can I do for you? I want to get a shooting star. I can work with that. The artist dipped a clean brush into their starting color, and they reached forward and began drawing on your cheek. The paint felt cooler than you imagined. Try not to move too much, the bristles lightly tickled as they glided across your skin. Stroke by stroke, Xavier started with the outer lines and then filled the center of the drawing. And before you knew it, it was over. You eagerly checked yourself in the mirror on the counter and beamed. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You got up and rejoined the others. There was a delighted pep in your step as you pointed at the final result. Nice choice. Now that you and the Suarez brothers were happy with all of your face paintings, it was time to discover the next activity. I think we should let Elizabeth pick the next one. Derek quickly paid for him and his brothers. You dug out some of your own money too, and then it was time to go. Have a good day. You too, Xavier. Your group gave one final round of thank yous to Xavier before moving on from the stall. The flow of the crowd brought you all drifting down the boardwalk. As you traveled further in, you actually spotted your parents. The Suarez boys jumped and waved, and their dad did exactly the same thing across the way. Next to him, Mrs. Suarez tried hiding her ear-to-ear grin with her hands. Your moms had their heads close together, laughing at Mr. Suarez's reaction. You shouted, you jumped and shouted, you jumped and waved, you waved quietly. You sighed at the outburst. I'm gonna jump and wave. Throwing your hands in the air, you waved them like a crazy as you bounced in place. Elizabeth sidestepped away from the group, not wanting to be associated with the undignified behavior. Ma spotted you right away and pointed, Mom, in your direction. They joyously waved back to you and Elizabeth. Then your parents continued on with their own adventure. Your group traveled further down the boardwalk. You browsed the long row of shops, pointing out all the interesting things on sale. I want to buy something for Derek. As the afternoon stretched on, your gang continued to enjoy the boardwalk. Elizabeth took long strides and led the pack, cutting her way through the crowd. Everyone was willing to follow her. I'm wondering if she wants to go to the Ferris wheel or to the roller coaster. I feel like the Ferris wheel might be the last thing we end up doing. Ooh, a Ferris wheel ride with Derek. How love Simon or love Victor of us. The Suarez brothers were giving her some leeway since it was her first time there and you were used to your older sister's attitude. She was making a beeline to the roller coaster. I knew it. I called it. The singular big kid ride of the boardwalk, and nothing was going to stand in her way. You kept up with Elizabeth and walked the lines, sir. You hung back with Derek, George, and Nicholas. I'm going to hang back with Derek, George, and Nicholas. Elizabeth was fine her own, and you weren't just there for the rides. You wanted to spend time with your friend. Nicholas had stopped holding onto Derek, instead flitting around on his own. Derek continued to keep a sharp eye on him. He occasionally pursed his lips when Nicholas was on the cusp of wandering further away than safely allowed. You watched the little boy as well. His attention wasn't nearly as single-minded as Elizabeth's. He eventually started to lag, unable to keep up with Elizabeth's breakneck pace. Nicholas tottered at the end of the group, slowing his pace, falling behind, then bursting forward to catch back up. It happened on repeat. His eyelids drooped and his head bobbed forward. There was an expression of vacant determination on his face. Is he like needing of a nap? It was a special kind of stubbornness only the youngest people in society could muster. The type where the concept of stopping wasn't just ignored, it flat out didn't exist in their minds. Luckily for Nicholas, he had a more self-aware big brother who could set limits for him. Hey, let's sit down for a second. What? It's a long walk, especially if you got small legs. So you mean for you? That's right, I don't need to take a break. Derek willingly accepted Elizabeth's shot at stature. You could guess why pretty easily based on his leading tone. If Derek wanted to rest, Nicholas would want that too. Derek scanned the area. What a great big brother. What a awesome older brother. Elizabeth. Derek scanned the area and pointed out some tables in the distance. Elizabeth glanced at the path ahead, but didn't argue about changing course. She picked an empty table that looked to be the cleanest of the selection. Everyone took a seat with a marked preference for sitting under the shaded half. You grabbed your water bottle and took a long and refreshing drink. It remained relatively cool on your tongue. Derek hefted Nicholas up on his lap. His brother wiggled slightly until he found a comfortable position. Hark is the right idea. It's water time. Nicholas gave no audible response. His eyes were completely closed. However, he did accept the water Derek placed into his hands. He sipped it sluggishly. Unfortunately, Nicholas tipped the water bottle upwards until it started to spill. Oops! I mean, at least it's just water. Derek snatched the bottle back and chuckled. Nicholas opened his eyes slightly, barely perturbed by getting splashed. He rubbed his wet face on Derek's shirt and stayed resting against his chest. You could tell how much the siblings like their older brother, especially Nicholas. Derek patted his head. You had to admit it was cute. Elizabeth is not amused. Elizabeth and George drank their water too, side-eyeing the scene, but not saying a word. You should drink, Derek. You followed Elizabeth and George's example and silently observed Nicholas. You kept your own business. You should drink, Derek. Thanks, I will. He pulled out his bottle with a smile and began to hydrate. George finished his drink with a final chug. He inclined his head towards his two brothers. Nicholas is gonna fall asleep. Elizabeth twisted the cap back on her bottle. She was ready to go. What now? Nicholas let out a small snuffly noise, a snore. Derek looked down at his clearly sleeping little brother, but it was no issue for Derek. He brushed it off as easily as Elizabeth's insult. I mean, they can just go ahead. I'll keep Derek company. As much as I really want to go to the roller coaster badly, I would rather keep Derek company. It's cool. I'll find our parents and they can look after Nico while he naps. Mom and Dad won't mind taking him along since he's down for the count. They're probably sitting at one of the restaurants or browsing a store or something. Elizabeth nodded, glad that it wouldn't be her problem. George appeared more hesitant. Okay. He peeked at Elizabeth and then back at you. Derek smiled reassuringly and continued to pitch his plan.
Anyway.
Plus, Elizabeth wanted to ride the roller coaster. I would have had to sit back with Nicholas anyway, since he's too short for it. It just makes sense for you three to do that while I'm dropping off Nicholas. So go get that ride. I'll catch up later. No, I'm gonna hang out with you, Derek. George sighed. He was being left behind thanks to Nicholas, but was placid enough to not argue with his older brother. Good. Okay, you nod accept the plan. Are you sure? I'll stay with you so you two aren't alone. Can I go with you, please? We should all go find your parents together. Splitting up is a bad idea. Elizabeth and George are fine. Can I go with you, please? I'm not gonna I don't want to seem too needy. I don't want to seem too eager. So I'm gonna say, I'll play it cool. You know what? I'll stay with you too, so you weren't alone. Derek's brows furrowed at your request. It's just gonna be a chore. Yeah, but I wanna hang out with you, Derek. That's the whole reason for this trip. Fewer people doing it means more people actually having fun. I have fun hanging out with you. You waved off his concern flippantly. Fun schmun. I wouldn't have asked if I didn't want to go with you. Derek gave you another minute to change your mind. When you didn't, he beamed brightly back at you.
It's
all right, you're with me. Always, Derek, always. Derek continued, now full of eagerness. We have 2 teams and 2 missions. Pass Nicholas over to the parents and ride the roller coaster while that's happening. Let's go get it done. Hark and I will meet you at the ride so you can stay there if you finish first. The plan met everyone's approval. Elizabeth faced Derek.
Thanks.
Well, thanks then. Her tone was lukewarm and could easily be mistaken as sarcastic. Derek shot you a look, not completely sure if Elizabeth was being serious or not. I could care less about what Elizabeth is feeling right this moment. I really could care less. I'm focused more on Derek. You held in a snort and discreetly nodded back at Derek, willing to play Elizabeth's interpreter. Derek relaxed and smiled at your sister.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. He winked at you while Elizabeth and George began to get up and ready themselves. We'll see them soon. He carefully shifted Nicholas around from snoozing on his lap to buoyed in his arms. Gently he eased to his feet. You dealt with your water and sprung up to your feet. Bye. Have fun. Don't have too much fun without us. Elizabeth, you better take good care of George. You waved. I'll say, Elizabeth, you better take good care of George. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and huffed. Don't worry, I get it. It's my job to be responsible now. Her sharp gaze fell to George. He immediately straightened up, nervous. Derek, I kind of like that she's Elizabeth's taking George, because I can see George seeing Elizabeth as a challenge. Derek began to speed walk, moving quickly but smoothly to not jostle his brother too much. You had to keep up a good pace to not be left behind. There was no dawdling and no distractions, despite the best attempts of the boardwalk to draw its guests' attention, with dazzling displays and enthusiastic employees. Derek might as well have been walking through an empty hall. You followed your friend down the line of stores and peeked into the restaurant windows, but there was no sign of the parents. Your steps started to slow down as you checked another side of the massive boardwalk. This might take longer than I thought. But it'll be alright. He kept upbeat as he pressed his eyes into yet another window, still nothing. Maybe George and Elizabeth will have time to ride the roller coaster twice. It's not like that'd be horrible for them. Though, there his enthusiasm flagged a little.
That's a bummer.
It does stink that you're stuck with this. I'm sorry. Derek is so thoughtful. I didn't want to ride the roller coaster anyway, he admitted. I didn't want to ride the roller coaster anyway, you lied. I'm not stuck anywhere, I'm spending time with you. I'd rather be here. That means you're stuck too. You stayed focused on your mission. I'm not stuck anywhere. I'm spending time with you. Thanks. Look at that blush. Ooh. Ooh. Derek, hubba hubba hubba. He blushed and busied himself peering to the next restaurant. After a bit more searching, Derek spoke again.
So...
Do you like roller coasters or are you scared of them? I like them all right. I think roller coasters are great. I'm scared of them. I don't think they're fun. You shrugged, not waiting. I think the roller coasters are great. The corner of Derek's lips raised. We'll have to ride it together later. Elizabeth and George can deal with going again. His response made you glad that you were friends. And I'd be more glad if we were even more than that. Actually, my family really likes going to amusement parks. I've been to this boardwalk probably more than 5 times, and we've gone to other places. Some have a lot more ride options. Oh, and water parks too. I'm not a big fan of water parks. I was never a big water person or water parks person. But if Derek wants to go, I will totally do it. He continued chatting all along about his favorite water parks as you searched down the boardwalk. There are slides and lazy rivers and those giant buckets that dump water on you. That's amazing. Lucky, I've never been to one of those. Besides this, I've only been to those really kiddie theme parks. He nodded along as he continued. I'm gonna be like, okay, that sounds cool. Okay, I'm gonna say, yeah, that's cool. And I like the wave pools too. The only problem is they're usually on schedule, so you have to get over there on time. Oh, did I tell you about the one that had water cannons? You listened carefully as he recounted his past theme park excursions. He ranked them on attractions, wait time, and stuff to keep younger family members entertained. Now that is one thing that both Derek and Cove have in common, is they seem to enjoy the water, and I don't. With the conversation light, you both laughed and smiled as you walked. Wait! He stopped in his tracks. Nicholas lightly thumped against his chest at the sudden loss of momentum. Derek readjusted him, and luckily Nicholas stayed asleep. I totally forgot we were supposed to be finding our parents. I wasn't even looking anywhere. He shook his head to refocus. He was too busy distracted by moi. We lost the plot. I guess it's time to get back to it. With that reminder, you can both continue searching. Sleeping Beauty occasionally let out a snore, but other than that, Nicholas didn't contribute to the quest. You wandered all around the boardwalk, eyes peeled for any sign of your parents. The sky turned golden as the sun began to disappear under the horizon. You glanced out to the sea, and it looked as if the ocean was swallowing the day. Lights began to click on, and the already shiny buildings of the boardwalk were set aglow. You took a moment to absorb the sunset. It was nice to take a breath and ignore the noisy backdrop. It was then that you finally got an answer to your mystery. No wonder you hadn't noticed before. Derek, look! You pointed your finger straight at your realization. Derek jumped at your outburst and followed your command. He squinted in the distance before he dropped his jaw. As soon as he understood, he blurted out in shock. They rented bikes? Across the way, pedaling along, the two pairs of parents were having a lovely double date. They were far enough away that you couldn't see much more than their helmets, but you could tell that Mom was laughing about something with her head thrown back. That explains that, he muttered under his breath in frustration. He gritted his teeth as the annoyance drained. The cold truth hit him, and he whispered, defeated, I can't take Nicholas on a bike. Derek shrunk in on himself. Oh no, so they can stop riding. What are we gonna do? He's their kid, they have to take him. You watched Derek nervously. What are we gonna do? Derek's eyes flicked over to yours, wide and distressed. He turned back to the bikes. The parents were blissfully unaware that you were even there. Finally, he let out a tired breath that was dangerously close to a sigh. His shoulders drooped enough to visibly lower Nicholas. If it were me, if I were the parents, I would take Nicholas. I don't want the rest of my kids. To me, like, I'm the parent. It's my responsibility to put my kids' enjoyment of this park, of this place first. Like, this is more for them than it would be for me. So I would be willing and be insistent upon just stopping what I'm doing to take Nicholas, and just let my other kids have fun. I can't do it. I can't give him to them. This is so nice of Derek. He's such a sweetheart. Derek, are you sure? Derek flinched and worried his lip. But not one to keep the mood down, Derek tried to shake it off. A soft smile pulled at his face. He faced the sun and spoke into the slowly disappearing light. It's just one of those things. It happens. Nicholas twitched in his deep sleep and Derek pulled him closer.
I've got a plan.
Don't worry, I've got a plan. You waited for him to continue. With every word, more confidence filled his demeanor. We should go see Elizabeth and George. They must be going crazy, wondering where we are. You agreed, but we're still concerned. You agreed, but we're still unhappy. You agreed and just wanted to move on. You agreed, trying to have the same optimism as Derek. He had a plan. That was something. It was time to locate the rest of the group. All right. You backtracked to the roller coaster. Derek was shuffling behind you. He'd slowed down from his bustling pace earlier. He had to be tired. I would have offered to carry Nicholas myself. Beside the sign that let you measure if you were tall enough to ride the roller coaster, Elizabeth stood with folded arms and George waved. We're here, all three of us. Elizabeth and George walked over and met you halfway. Hey! He scuffed one of his shoes on the ground. He felt the weight of Elizabeth's gaze and let out a nervous chuckle. He shrugged as if to say, yeah, the parents' plan didn't work out. Sorry for taking so long. There was sort of a problem. Duh. Nicholas snuffled into Derek's shirt as he snored. Before she or George could ask for more details, Derek jumped in with the other idea he'd hinted at. I'm gonna hold Nicholas until it's time to go home. The rest of you can keep having fun. Go wherever you want. No, not just by yourself. I'm gonna stay attached to Derek the whole time. George uncomfortably pulled at his shirt, stretching the fabric as it seems. The irony is, the fact that Derek is not clingy, makes me want to cling to him, if that makes sense. I think it's cool that he wants to think about everybody else first, and he is more than willing. Even though I clearly feel like he does like my character, he does like me, he still wants to make sure that I'm having fun, and he doesn't want to make it seem like I'm stuck doing something I don't want to do, which is something that I do appreciate a lot, and I do value a lot. I don't want to go. I want to help. He visibly felt bad about all of this being put on Derek. Oh, that's so nice. That is so sweet. You got the impression that if George was a little bigger, that he'd offer to take a turn holding his baby brother instead. No, it's okay. I'll be fine. You really shouldn't waste all your time standing around with me. Plus, then who would help Elizabeth and Hark around the boardwalk? They haven't been here before. You know this place and can make sure they don't get lost, or don't miss the good parts. George turned to you and Elizabeth, but hesitated with his answer. It would help me to know we didn't send them off alone. They're our guests, right? Okay, that's so nice of Derek. Thanks, George. Derek leaned closer to Elizabeth and whispered, I don't want George to miss out on the boardwalk because of Nicholas or because of me. Please go take him and have some fun. Elizabeth and Derek made eye contact, and for all you could figure, they had some sort of eldest sibling telepathy going on. That was the only way you could explain it, because rather than arguing, she agreed to work with Derek. This is really cool. I feel like this is really interesting to see Elizabeth and Derek have this understanding, and I want to think that they're having some sort of newfound respect for each other. It might be interesting for Elizabeth to like notice this of Derek. It's like, wow, he's a really good older sibling, you know. I'll do it. Elizabeth then pressed her lips together and considered you. She snorted and then lightly flicked your nose. But I don't need Hark with me. George isn't a pain. Derek's brows creased, not expecting that. Yeah, I'll stay with Derek. I can stay with Derek? Right, I'll handle taking Derek out. I'll handle taking Derek out for some fun. You nodded and agreed with Elizabeth, nudging. You were frustrated with Derek, but still didn't want to abandon him. You were frustrated with Derek. Right, I'll handle taking Derek out for some fun. Good, I thought you could do something useful. Hark. Derek's voice was strangled and hushed.
You don't have to.
You don't have to do that. I know, right? I know. But that's the thing. I still want to do it. How awesome is that? What about you? Why does it have to be just you? You could have suggested we take turns watching Nicholas. Derek shook his head, and you felt your stubbornness spark.
It doesn't matter.
It's fine. Someone's got to be here for Nicholas, and it's easiest if I do it. That's all. Well, it's easiest for me if I stick around then. Well, that's too bad because I won't go.
Yeah, sure.
George, show me something interesting. Elizabeth's like, all right, I'm done. You two, like, lovebirds, just go ahead and fight it out and just get a room already. That's what Elizabeth's saying. Just get a room already, you two. I know we're still in middle school, but George, I'm aware of that. George gulped but nodded. His gaze bounced between Elizabeth and your standoff with Derek, and he wisely decided to take his leave. He led Elizabeth away, passing by assorted stalls. He seemed to have an idea of where he was going, so you figured he and your sister would probably have a good time. Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot, bouncing around like the floor was on fire. It got more panicked the further away your sister and his brother got without you. Hark, you have to go. I am the one who decided not to give him to our parents. It's not your fault. It's mine. You need to go have fun. But Derek, this is how I'm going to have fun. I have fun by hanging out with you. I wouldn't have as much fun without you. You need to help more than I need fun. You're not getting rid of me. When the other two were completely out of sight, Derek stopped his frantic movement, having spent all his excess nervous energy. You met his gaze head-on, staring at the friend who simply couldn't help himself from being helpful. His face changed to something tense and small. You wondered how many times he did this, took on all the responsibilities so that others didn't have to be bothered. It didn't seem like he was called out on it much. Slowly he smiled. His grin was tender, enough to be genuine. See, this is why I feel like I am more compatible with Derek, because I do feel like my character was able to influence Cove to be different. I don't know if necessarily... I don't like the idea that I influenced Cove to be a better person, because I don't think that he's necessarily was a better person because of me. I think he became a different person, and that person was still a perfectly awesome and amazing and great person, based on my influence. I question sometimes if I pushed Cove too much, if I pushed him out of his comfort zone too much, or if I molded him too much towards being a person that I was more attracted to, instead of just accepting him for who he was. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm really loving this dynamic between my character now and Derek, because I do feel like it's more healthy. It's a more healthy, my influence and me calling him out on things and pushing him out of his comfort zone is a little bit more, it's more balanced and more compatible, and I feel like it goes both ways. It's a two-way kind of street, and so I feel like me and Derek are sort of on the same level, whereas with me and Cove, I just never 100% felt like we were always on the same level, because he was so passive and it could be hard for him to form an opinion sometimes, and it almost seemed like I was making all the decisions for him, whereas here Derek also tries to be more assertive. He is way more assertive and tries to put himself before others and is very vocal about it, and I am too, and when we start butting heads, it's a really awesome like argument or really awesome debate, which I think enhances Derek to be better at what he's already good at. You know, I'm not challenging him to be something that is vastly different from who he is now. I'm sort of like checking to make sure that he is an even better version of what he already is. Whereas with Cove, I felt like I was sort of molding him slightly away from what his default state was to being someone that's a bit more dramatically different by comparison. Hopefully that makes sense. Slowly he smiled. His grin was tender enough to be genuine. Well, then if you're gonna be here anyways, we don't have to make ourselves miserable. It's you and me and, well, Nicholas time. Now you're talking.
Alright.
Alrighty. He lifted Nicholas higher and stood tall, ready to take on the world. Then his knees buckled and he blushed. Can we sit down somewhere? Yeah, that's probably a good idea. After spending all the time searching high and low, both of you needed a break. You both dragged yourselves over to a nearby beach. It was thankfully empty and away from the crowd. Oh, Derek took a heavy seat and exhaled deeply. He kept Nicholas clutched close to his chest. It was a familiar motion, one that Derek must have done hundreds of times before. I get why Nicholas is so attached to you. Maybe you shouldn't take on everything yourself. You don't like getting help, do you? I admire how responsible you are. Your parents are lucky to have you. You stayed quiet. Can I say all of these things? These are all great things to say. You stayed quiet. Maybe you should take on everything yourself. You don't like getting help. Well, you know, I like this, but I do this myself. I also do this too. I try to take on everything myself too, so I feel like a hypocrite if I tell him this. You don't like getting help, do you? I admire how responsible you are. Your parents are lucky to have you. You stayed quiet. You get why Nicholas is so attached to you. I admire how responsible you are. I mean, you're probably there for him as much as his mom and dad. It'd be hard for Nicholas to not be as attached to you as he is.
Maybe?
Oh, maybe? He appeared surprised at your observation and unsure how to respond. He leaned his head back and whispered to the sky. I don't think that's such a bad thing. You weren't sure what to make of that. He wasn't lying, but looked too sad for it to be the full truth. He didn't say any more about it. After you both had settled, Derek carefully reached into his pocket. He struggled to dig around to find what he was searching for. Aha! He pulled out his special snack baggie in triumph. It was still completely full, untouched from this morning. Derek tried to pick out some morsels from the bag, but it was even harder to keep Nicholas from flopping over. Need some help there? Derek flushed at your offer and became self-conscious over the fact that you noticed his difficulty. Thanks. Despite his embarrassment, can I just give him a kiss now? We're in middle school. We can kiss now. Despite his embarrassment, he passed the snacks to you. You took the bag and he steadied his hold on Nicholas. Oh, I just need the granola chunks. You can leave the other stuff in there. And some of it would be good. Is that your favorite? Yeah, but no. You squinted at him in confusion. He laughed cheekily, having expected your reaction. It's my favorite snack in the bag, but that's not the reason I want it. The other stuff isn't for me. There's a handful of the cereal. Nicholas secretly likes that way he can have something that's not just candies and cookies. I brought the walnuts for George in case we were out too long and he got hungry again. So basically he filled his bag not just with all the things he wants, but also things specifically for his other siblings. How responsible is that? He dropped his gaze from you shyly.
Honestly?
The gummy candies are for you, because maybe you'd get hungry too. I'm wondering if he's picked the gummy candies because that was the very first thing that I picked. And therefore was probably my favorite of the mix because I picked it first. That would be kind of cool if that's what the game did. That's 4 handfuls. You always think ahead. That's so nice of you. You shouldn't use your snack bag for other people. I do this also. I also do this for other people, so this would be hypocritical of me to say to him. And plus, I think the fact that he did it makes him super attractive. That I shouldn't discourage him from doing it because I think it's so great to be that selfless and thoughtful. I find that very attractive. So I'm not. While this may be true that you shouldn't. Any extreme is bad. You shouldn't be so selfless that you end up, completely dismissing yourself. That's why my tagline is love yourselves and love each other. Of course, you need to be selfless and love other people, but don't forget to take care of yourself too. You need to be able to. You are important as well. Stop doing everything for everyone else. And what if you needed some more for yourself? You beamed at his consideration. You frowned at his mission. You always think ahead. You shouldn't use your. That's so nice of you. Derek thought of others a lot. Giving up 3/4 of his snack bag showed just how much.
No worries.
It's nothing. His tone was bright at your encouragement. Do you want any gummy candies? You can take it. I still have more. Sure, thank you. I don't want it. You should eat it. It's your special snack bag. You nodded, accepted. You shook your head and refused.